This is Creator Talk Live. I'm your host, Bryan Schmidt. I am the author of a number of books, including Shortcut, the latest novel, which you can get through my link at the top of my profile in the first tab. You can also get my Predator books. I've done Official Predator, Official X-Files, and I've got some cop novels, including Simon Says. My Shortcut just came out on audiobook, so I'm excited about that. Our guest tonight is a TikToker and fantasy author named Mikel Melwasul. He's the co-author of a book called, I wrote it down and it got erased. Something Exordium.
Paragon Exordium.
Exordium. He co-wrote this with a partner. He'll tell you about it in a minute. But first I want to discuss his very little-known first novel. This is a fantasy called Chronic Doom. It's about a man who's always punctual until he gets accidentally sent to a fantasy world where there are no clocks and no one has any sense of time. It's a stunning dystopia about a descent into madness, and I was quite enjoying it, but unfortunately, Mikel never finished it because he also lost track of time. Anyway, so I told you I would only.
No, that's good.
Showing up early. This book actually sounds good. I think it would be a good book, man.
What's funny?
So, Mikel, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. That's really funny because, like, my co-author's in the Army, and he's lived in Germany and Guatemala, all over the place. And I'm constantly, every time we're meeting up to chat, I'm like, "Hey, what time zone are you?" I never get it right.
Is it Michael or Mikel? I keep saying Mikel.
It's Michael. You can call me Mick. I go by Mick.
Okay.
It's Mikel Melwasul.
I did my best guess, and I figured you would correct me. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyway, was I wrong? You used to be a lawyer, or you didn't used to be a lawyer?
No, I didn't used to be a lawyer. I have a degree in criminal justice studies, and I've been in a lot of law. My mother-in-law is an HR at a law firm, and I've done a lot of stuff at law firms, but I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't used to be a lawyer.
So he was so punctual, I figured, man, there must be. Maybe that's why, because his mother was like, "Hey, be on time." So,
right.
Anyway, I really want to read that novel now, Chronic Doom, man.
That's a good title.
He's punctual and he goes to a place where there's no time.
It's a funny horror novel. It's horror only for that guy.
Man. It could be. Oh, yeah. My God. Well, that's like my worst nightmare, too, although, I'm always on time. I always think it's a respectful thing to do. But when I go to the Philippines, where my fiance lives, or I went to Africa as a missionary, when they say to be there at 7, they mean 9. They mean 9. You show up at 7 like I did, they're half naked and I'm rude. I walked in on more than one family and they were half dressed. "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not supposed to be here yet." I'm like, "What? I'm right on time." I'm telling you. It's a different world. So anyway, tell us a little bit about what made you want to be a writer? How did you get into writing?
I've loved reading from a young age. My dad read to me and my brothers growing up at bedtime before bed for a long, long time. He started us off with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia from about as young as you can understand something, right? So that's where my love of reading comes from. My mom was a big reader. I would do library challenges growing up where you read as many books as you can at the library and you get little rewards and stuff. And I would run out of spaces on the sheets for how many books I'd read to try and win the prizes, and they wouldn't have a prize big enough for all the books I'd read. So that's where that stems from. I get it from my mom. I get it from my dad. I wrote my first sort of short stories in 8th grade. Some just goofy little mystery novels not even novels, goofy little mystery short stories that no one will ever see if I can help it. But yeah, that's where it stems from.
That's where it stems from? So, yeah. I mean, look, you've written an epic novel. It's huge. It's big. It's thick.
Yeah, it's a doorstopper.
It's 400 or 500 pages, maybe 1,000 pages?
776.
Okay, there you go. And you co-wrote this with a guy who is, what is his name? He just got on TikTok. I haven't learned his name yet.
Yeah, so his name on TikTok is David Elberin.
David Elberin, okay. So that's his co-author. Now, how did you... Oh, there he is. Hi,
there he
David.
is.
How are you? I think I followed you. Yeah, I did. I just haven't learned.
I appreciate that.
David. So, anyway, I don't know. Does David... How many followers do you have, David?
40.
Talk about it too, but he has 8. Oh, he can't come up yet. He has to have...
He's got 40. Yeah, we're trying to get him to 1,000, but we've been...
100, otherwise I'd bring him up.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, we'll get into that. Follow him if you haven't.
So, guys, David Elbrin here in the comments is the co-author of this book we're going to be talking about, which is Paradox Excorium. Is that right? Excorium? Or Excorium?
I see what you're doing. Paragon Exordium, yeah.
Paragon! Oh, my God. See, it's a paradox to me to get this done. Well, I remember I told you exordium was a hard word, man.
You did.
But now
you did.
Exordium is stuck in my head. It's the
there you go.
Word I can't get.
the easier word of the two is the one you can't hold on to. That's
the easiest word I can't remember.
That's some lovely irony right there.
That is irony. And I don't try this at home, folks. I'm a professional and I'm a skilled editor. I'm really good with words. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. So, I mean, you obviously you love stories. You grew up on some of the same stories I did because my dad was a huge Tolkien fan. And when I was a kid, I really got into the Chronicles of Narnia because they had a little animated TV show that came on, and I read those and really loved those. Mm-hmm. But I also devoured all the Sherlock Holmes and all the Laura Ingalls Wilder books and all the all the stuff, man, everything, And so. How did you go about when you figured out you wanted to be a storyteller? How did you go about figuring out how to write well? You obviously grow up in drunk stuff. Did you actually study writing during that process, or did you study it later in college and stuff?
I didn't study writing at all. My degree was criminal justice.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I've been an avid reader for a long time, and I've read a lot. And I think one of the keys to writing well is reading a lot. Personally, people have different opinions on that, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. I did some creative writing stuff in school, but nothing major. I wrote papers for college, but nothing like that. So I got the idea for the book I wanted to write when I was in high school. And then I just held on to the idea for years, and I built out the world in my head all throughout college and stuff, but I didn't start writing it until I graduated college. And I was I had time to, because I wasn't drowning in debt because I managed to get scholarships and work my way through college. So I had a little time while my wife finished up her degree, and so I was like, well, let's take the next 2 years and see if we can write a book. And I dragged Dave into it. He was a good buddy of mine with an English degree. I'm like, hey, here's this concept I'm working on. Can you just alpha read chapters with me as I work on them? And we just ended up meeting every weekend for 6 years and working on the book. And he started out as an editor, but he just evolved to such a degree throughout that process that I call him my co-author. And he's written a chapter or two for the second book we're working on right now, and he's just gotten more and more heavily involved in it as we've gone. And it wouldn't be the same without him.
Well, I got you. So, I mean, it's a big deal to think you can write an epic fantasy. I mean, that's
right.
A 700-page book, man. I mean, it's not like you started with something like, oh, I'll just write a simple 80,000-word novel. That's what I started with. And then, now I can't write below 120 almost. But
right.
But you started with 700 pages, which to me it's unfathomable how somebody can write a novel that thick. My stories are big, but they're never that big. So, how do you know it's any good? I mean, seriously, here's why. You said you didn't take any training on writing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little presumptuous to say, oh yeah, well, I read a lot and I speak English, so I know how to put a story together, because there's an art to it. There's a structure. There's a lot of details. I mean, this is what I do. I'm a professional editor, so I edit people all day long. That's how I make the bulk of my money to support my family. And so I'm not saying it's not gripping, Cider.
No.
I'm just saying that I'm asking him to kind of talk about how he figured that out along the way, because there was part of that process.
Right. Well, I mean, we did 6 drafts, right? Oh, okay. We went through this with a fine-tooth comb. We rewrote it. We cut huge chunks out of it, right? But I mean, of course, I have imposter syndrome like any other author constantly, right? But the things that really determined for me that it was worth putting out there were my buddy, who's a good friend of mine, who's a very honest and in-your-face friend, met with me 6
That's kind of
years.
As a writer, honestly.
Yeah, for 6 years he met with me. I know him well enough to know that if he didn't think it was good and trust in it, he wouldn't have met with me on the weekend for 6 years. He wouldn't have wasted that time. He would have said, stop wasting your time. Put it down. And my wife, who's an English teacher, who's very honest with me and whose livelihood, in some capacity relies on this as well, she liked it and she was involved in the process and she thought it was good. We also had a Patreon we launched while writing it, where we released chapters to people, and all the feedback we got from that was, "This is good," and they were like alpha readers. Our beta readers loved it. Like, it's just been I have yet to meet someone who doesn't like it. I'm looking forward to that. I want to know why someone doesn't like it.
Yeah, but you made a post today about how you.
Yes, I did.
It's a negative, and you were disappointed about it because they didn't give you any feedback. They just kind of put a generic thing, which looked like it was something they copied and pasted, and you're like, come on, tell me what's wrong, man.
Right, exactly. and I've gotten don't think I haven't gotten criticism. Right, that's what alpha reads. That's what drafts are for. Right.
No.
But none of it has been, "This is crap. Don't waste your time."
And that's good.
Right?
You know, guys, I don't ask these questions to be mean to Michael. I ask these questions because we're here to we're kind of to digest the craft and process of writing and creating a book. And what he's done is create what we in the industry like to call a Chihuahua killer. This is a book that if you drop it on the average size Chihuahua, that dog is dead. All right?
Yeah, that's fair. I like that.
A little book where the dog is just stunned. Oh, no, he'll get over it. Like one of these kind of books. It's not one of these. No. It's a big Chihuahua killer, man. This book is big. You could use it, like as you said, as a doorstop. And you could even wound your children or your mother-in-law. I'm just saying. So it's a big endeavor. And there's a process of learning how to write. And people think believe me, I deal with people all day long who think they know how to do it, and they don't.
Right.
And then there's people who have a natural gift for it, and part of that comes from actually reading stories. But it's also, you have to know how to put the words together in a rhythmic way. You have to find your voice, all that pattern. So tell us first, before we get into any of that, where'd the idea come from? And give us a little summary of don't spoil it, obviously.
Yeah.
Just give us the elevator pitch of the book.
So the idea came from the 80s movie that my dad showed me in high school, Red Dawn. If you haven't seen it, it's about communists invading rural America and the Americans forming up.
Swayze and Charlie Sheen and a bunch of
Yeah. So I watched that, and then that night I had a dream about goblins and Nazis invading the U.S. And I was like, that could be something. And it just, over the years, as I built up this world in my head, it developed into a concept, an idea, and it improved drastically, especially through the involvement of others. Right. So the basic concept is, and this I wrote like a world building kind of thing before we ended up not even using the lore dump that I had at the beginning. We pulled that out.
You kind of wrote like a lore book before you even started.
Yeah, well, I wrote the prologue originally was a lore dump about the magic spell having to do with the book, and it was like a Genesis. The original title for the book was New Genesis, right? So it was like a retelling of Genesis, and that's how we started the book. We ended up pulling that out and redoing it to be a little more exciting from the start, right? So the basic concept of the book is like 10,000 years ago, there were other beings and other races in the world. There were elves, dwarves, orcs, etc. And humanity, in its folly, caused a giant flood to wipe out most of the world. But before the flood could destroy most of the world, the elves and the dwarves united and pulled all magic and all magical beings from our reality. And then 10,000 years passed, something went wrong with the spell, and they didn't come back when the flood ended. Time passed. Society evolved without them. And then the spell broke in modern times, and the sky shattered from the effect of it, and the world was plunged into chaos, and most humanity was wiped out in the first month. And now humanity is trying to survive in this new world that's full of fae and elves, dwarves, etc. And it's an apocalyptic story, right? The world has basically ended.
So it's not a secondary world; it's actually our world, but after some kind of disaster.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like The Walking Dead, that takes place after the apocalypse has begun and there's people interacting. It's been compared to The Walking Dead by some of my beta readers and my reviewers. It's like The Walking Dead meets Band of Brothers or Walking Dead meets Lord of the Rings. So it's a survival. No, they're not. I was very happy to hear those, right? Yeah. So it's not dystopian future. Some people think that it's modern. It's got dystopian vibes, but it's not sci-fi. It's modern fantasy. It's rural fantasy. It's hard to define, right? Because it does a lot of genre bending. And so the main story focuses on three main POVs. One is a private military contractor who's has a group of soldier guys who are in the world now trying to survive and adapt to magic and stuff, led by a guy named Peter Blair. Then there's Sarah Young, who's a young journalism student in the city of Paragon who immediately discovers she has magic and her responsibilities with this new ability to the people around her. and how she learns to deal and cope with it and be involved with her surroundings. Because, I mean, it's rural Georgia, so not everyone likes the idea of magic. And that ties into the story as well. And then we've got a young kid, a teenager named Sean, who gets roped up with Peter and the others and dragged along on their adventure, who's just a teenager with nothing really special about him except that he notices things other people don't. And usually that person gets ignored in stories. Like most stories, you have the kid who notices something and everyone ignores him. But in my story, I wanted to undermine that, and I want people to actually pay attention. When the kid says, "Hey, I saw something over there," the adults are like, "What? Where?" Let's be careful. So it's about them exploring this world and learning what's going on and trying to survive.
Okay. So, yeah. So now here's the thing about genre you guys are talking about down there. The thing, urban fantasy is actually a thing, but rural fantasy became a thing. And one of the first components of rural fantasy was True Blood by Charlene Harris. It was written as urban fantasy because they'd already had urban fantasy, and that was invented by people like my friend Ginger Buchanan, who's now retired but used to be an editor at Penguin Random House, who kind of bought the first urban fantasies and helped create that subgenre because they felt it better labeled these books. In this case, it sounds like he's got kind of a urban military fantasy kind of thing going on.
In a lot of ways.
Which is a category. It's just not as popular of a subgenre that you hear about it. It doesn't have its own shelves in stores and things like that. But it is a legit thing. It really doesn't matter what. Honestly, it doesn't matter what genre it is as long as you find it. So the biggest trick for him is saying, okay, if it's like The Walking Dead meets whatever, that or Lord of the Rings or whatever. That is a great way for people to get an idea of what they like. And then people will look in your reviews and things to see, what you liked about it. And that's going to help him as well, Michael, to pinpoint its audience. So guys, please, if you read these books, go out to Amazon and review them. Go on, Goodreads if you want. But I'll tell you what, Amazon is the big one for indies because that's where we need the sales and we need the reviews to get found by people.
Right.
The more reviews you get, the more it helps. And please like this chat so that I can keep this going. And please follow Michael, follow me, and we'll keep giving you great content. So I think the main thing here I wanted to say is that, you don't have to give gifts. I'm doing this for free, but if you do give gifts, I'm going to try to organize some. Please thank you for blessing our authors. For me, I'm just going to use whatever I get. Eventually do some giveaways and things like that. In the meantime, thank you for being with us tonight. So, Michael, you had this idea. How long ago did you have this idea before you started writing it?
2009.
Okay. And when did you start writing the book?
Consistently in 2017.
Wow. So it sat for a while.
Yeah. I did a lot of world building, and I took notes and stuff, and I planned out concepts and stuff like that. But I didn't actually start really diving into the writing until 2017.
So which came first, your main characters or character, or your world?
The world.
The world, yeah.
The world, and then then Peter Blair closely after that, and then Sarah Young followed up after that, and then Sean came in. Probably one of the latest characters was the perspective of Sean.
Sorry, you're not boring me.
You're good.
I'm tired, man.
I hear you.
So I've been editing all day. All right. Anyway, so great. Well, listen. So when you started writing this thing, and how did you? It sounds like you're a pre-planner, but are you a pantser? Are you an outliner? Did you heavily outline? What's your process?
Yeah, so it's varied a lot. I had scenes that I wanted to get to. And it was a question of how do we get to those scenes? And I had scenes that I want to get to that we never used, right? So the first draft,
ignore the invite I accidentally sent to you. I apologize. I'm trying to do something else, and I accidentally invited somebody. So whoever it is, I apologize. But anyway, keep going. I'm sorry, Michael.
No worries. So we would plan out chapters 10 at a time. Essentially, is how we would tackle it. We would say, okay, here's the next 10 chapters or 5 chapters. Here's what we want to do. And then we would write them, and then we would review them and see if we needed to adjust our plans for the next couple chapters based on the characters, their actions, and what happened. So there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of pantsing. It's really both. I have a full outline for book 2 that's got chapter by chapter, but it adjusts based on the character actions and stuff. So I don't stick directly to my outline because the story changes as I'm writing it, depending on the characters and whatnot. So there's a lot of steps involved in it.
Yeah, no, that's the better. I mean, for me, that's the more natural way to go because I mean,
Right.
characters come alive and things happen and things go different ways and you get ideas and the first ideas that come in your head tend to be the cliche ideas. They tend to be the
Right.
ones that are the most obvious. And if you want to write a good book, you have to like dig deeper and go on. So
Yeah.
David's saying something about so many original chapters became 2 to 3 chapters. Is that what he said?
Right. Yeah, yeah. We would take a chapter and we'd write it and like, we need to expand more on this or that and split it up, or we'd have multiple perspectives in a chapter and then be like, we got to the point where like, well, we can't have multiple perspectives in a chapter. Each perspective should be its own chapter. So they would get split up and divided and changed that way.
Yeah. Sorry, my friend
You're good.
is teasing me. Anyway, so good to see you, Eddie. I will talk to Fernando later, I promise. Fernando de la Vega. He's got the best impersonation of Antonio Banderas I've ever heard. But
Oh, nice.
we hang out later at night. So, so you got David involved. Then, at what point in the process? How many drafts did you have done at that point?
I had about 100 pages written.
Oh, really? So he came on really early.
Yeah, and I had the first act done. And I wanted feedback before I got any further into it. So yeah, he came on very early. And originally just to give me some feedback. And it just evolved from there naturally.
So you did follow act structure.
Yeah, for a while. We had it broken into like 3 acts as our basic concept. And then we sort of veered away from that. Not too much, but I would definitely, I think of the book in 3 acts primarily.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, any good book is written in 3 acts. And I'm not saying people write it in 4 are wrong.
Right.
I'm saying that I can break it into 3 acts and tell you exactly what the 3 acts are. It's the
Right.
natural flow of Western storytelling. It's the same thing as 7-point structure. It goes back to Aristotle. And so I'm not surprised you thought of it that way. That was probably your natural sense of storytelling. I mean, Tolkien worked the same way. Lewis worked the same way. When you read a lot of stories, you just get it embedded in your brain. And it's something that, although I learned formal structure for it later, it was something I inherently knew too when I started writing. So that's probably where that comes from.
More than likely.
I mean, what are the most difficult? Well, first of all, what are your writing tools? What are your writing tools? Do you write on Word? Do you write on Scrivener? What do you use to write?
I write on Google Docs.
Really?
Yeah.
You write on Google Docs?
I write on Google Docs.
That's
it's a curse.
Easiest to share with David?
That's exactly why. And I can do it from my phone or my laptop. I can access it anywhere because my brain is constantly firing off. And so it's the easiest way to communicate and stuff. And I've been thinking about moving away from that after having been done with the first one and finding a way to use different tools that we can use to communicate and stuff. But Google Docs has been the simplest way to do it. The only other tool...
I tell you what I do that might work for you is that Scrivener. Now, I like Scrivener because I only use it for first drafts. So once I translate everything in, what's up, Steve? I see that I take it out of there. Then I have to work in Word because I don't want to put it all back in. But the nice part about Scrivener is you hook it up to Dropbox, and you can literally, I use it on my phone, I use it on my iPad. I usually write almost everything on my iPad because my iPad has this, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, my keyboard attached. So I literally use it like a laptop, and it's so much lighter, and it can travel with me. Whereas I don't want to take my laptop and have something happen to it. So I literally take and use this everywhere, and I also then can switch over to my laptop anytime I want. So I can flip back and forth between all of them, and then eventually I export it into Word. The beautiful thing about it is you set up little folders and little scenes. So you can set up a folder for each chapter, but you can also have a research folder that doesn't ever get printed or shared. You can have the disposal folder where you take stuff you decide this doesn't work and you put it there, but you don't lose it. I put little pictures and images and all kinds of stuff in there. I have all these stuff. And you can drag and drop anytime you want to move a scene. You just boom. Or
That's nice.
You renumber it or whatever. You don't have to cut and paste it out of the document like you often do with Word or Google Docs.
I've got a running...
Because once you get that done, revising it in Word or Google Docs, that's a pretty easy thing to do because everything's kind of there and in structure. But when you're moving everything around in the beginning and you're figuring it out, that's when Scrivener is really nice. It also has a note card program as part of it. It can read to you in different voices out loud, which reading to you is kind of important, I think. But anyway, I mean, I was just curious. I'm not necessarily trying to sell you up, but the nice thing about Scrivener is it's only like It's less than $50 for it. It's like 20.
Yeah, that's not bad.
It used to be. I think it's like 30 now or something. But the one for the iPad I think cost me only like $15. And
that's not a bad deal.
Yeah, it's yeah. So anyway, it's pretty cool. But anyway, the whole point of this is you start writing on Google Docs. So how do you have like obviously the way with Google Docs works for you guys that don't know is that basically anybody he shares it with, and he can set the settings of privacy. Anybody who has the link, or anybody can see it if they have the link, or however he sets it up, can get in there. But so does he give you notes in Google Docs? You have a separate document with some stuff in it too that you access? How do you do all that? Because it's a lot to manage when you're dealing with a 700-page book.
So I have the outline document, which has links to each of the chapters. And then under each link it has like a summary of the chapter. It has the song we've picked. So we have an exercise we do where we pick a song for every chapter we feel matches the vibe of the chapter and is inspirational for the chapter. So it's got the POV it is, the chapter title. It's just got a nice little breakdown, and it's just this long list that links to each of those. It was also super helpful to have when we were doing chapter releases on Patreon. So we do like a chapter or two a month and release those on Patreon, and then I could share the link to the Google Doc where those were hosted. For the readers, and I could revoke and change permissions as needed. And this way, Dave can access it while I'm writing it, or once it's done. At any stage, he can access it. He can leave comments. He can make adjustments, grammatical, etc. He can have different levels of access to it.
I would think it's super. Though, I know I've worked with people collaborating in Google Docs, and to see them comment and they're moving stuff while you're trying to work on it, man, that would be distracting to me. But I don't know.
He's not usually in the document while I'm working on it, and if he does, he makes it very, very clear he's there and writes things in the middle of my sentences to mess with me. So it can be.
Good man, Dave. My kind of guy. I like.
Oh yeah, I'll be writing, and then all of a sudden it starts turning into smut out of nowhere.
Denying it now. I would never do that. Of course not. Of course not.
Right.
I respect the integrity of the process. You wrote that, not me. That's part of your mother. I don't know why you put that in there. It was therapy.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, creative people are notoriously pranksters, so that's what we do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting, because apparently you work at a different level of Google Docs. I don't even know how to set up all those link folders, but the music thing intrigues me because a lot of people always ask you for a playlist. I don't have a particular playlist. I actually write more often with the TV on in the background than I do with music.
Sure.
The reason is because I'm a musician. And so if I hear music, especially music with lyrics, I'm going to start singing along, then I'm not writing anymore. So
I hear
when
that.
I put on some TV show I've seen a million times, just to have a drone in the background, turn the volume down, and just let it run. And then I have a common drone underneath. Now, because I'm ADHD, that actually helps me focus. I know for other people it might drive them nuts, but that's my method. But yeah, so the music you mentioned, you pick a music for each chapter. Do you listen to that song when you're writing the chapter, or every time you need to get the mood, or is that just like an initial thing?
We usually pick it afterward.
Oh, you pick it after, okay.
Sometimes we go into it having one. We debate and make suggestions to each other. Sometimes we hear a song, we're like, hey, save this, and we can maybe use it on a chapter later because it matches the vibe of something we want to write or matches a character we want to write. And it varies drastically, the different types of music. Some of it's has no lyrics. Some of it's all instrumental. It's every single type of genre. The book has a link to the Spotify playlist in the back of it. So anyone who picks it up can get immediate access to the playlist we compiled for the first book.
Do you have a playlist that you use when you're writing, or the playlist of the chapters?
I have a playlist I use when I'm writing. I have a playlist for the first book. I have a playlist for the second book. I have a playlist that's just focus. So it's songs that help me get in the headspace and stuff. But there's ones dedicated to each kind of grouping and each individual thing. Crown, cool. About time.
You've been crowned the king of fantasy. You're the king of punctuality. No,
hey, that's fine with me.
There you go. You missed the opening, Alex. You missed my introduction of his fake book that really actually sounded pretty good, I thought.
I liked the title a lot.
Chronic Doom.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're obviously writing fantasy in part because your father read you a lot of fantasy. Do you have any all the short stories you wrote, other stuff? Are you going to write other stuff, or you just kind of want to do more epic fantasy or urban fantasy or urban military fantasy kind of thing?
Right. So we have plans for at least 2 follow-up series in this world. So we've got how
many books are in the first series?
3 is the plan. We got three three plotted out.
So you're
And then we
doing
have
a trilogy, and you're going to maybe do 2 more trilogies.
something like that. I have no idea how long the other ones will be, but they'll be in the same world. So I don't have any specific ideas of other things to write right now. I would love to explore other genres eventually, but I kind of want to tackle any other genre I do in this world because I have aspirations to make this really a franchise. If other people want to come in and write stuff in this world, kind of like Star Wars, where you have multiple authors and stuff, I want to embrace that. I have 2 of my beta readers are working on side projects or working on spinoffs in the world. My co-author Dave's writing a horror novella based on some of the characters that kind of disappear in the first act and what happens to them. So you could write a horror, you could write adventure, you could write children's books in this world, you could write any genre you want, romance.
Turning it into kind of what we call the shared world concept, which is popular these days. Yeah. So who are some of, let's see, who are some of your inspirations, man? Obviously, you grew up, you've already mentioned Tolkien and
Sure.
Tolkien and Lewis several times, but who are some of the writers that you enjoy reading now and along the way that have kind of said, you said, oh yeah, I want to write like that, or those are the ones that you're going back to?
Yeah, Ian Colfer, who wrote the Artemis Fowl series, there was definitely inspiration there growing up. It's a similar modern, it's more of a sci-fi with like fairies and stuff in a modern setting that's really good about an Irish genius, and that's a good one. Jeff Smith, who wrote the Bone series, which is a graphic novel actually, but it's a very, very good fantasy graphic novel that I absolutely adore. It's got dark fantasy, but it's also got some great light humor and wonderful characters and a fantastic art style. The guy, I forget who wrote Redwall, but those were a big influence on me growing up, the Redwall books. Ted Dekker is another author who I really like. His Circle series, which is sort of a portal fantasy kind of thing. It's an allegorical story, but it's a really, really well done. A lot of his books I like. George R. R. Martin to an extent. I have qualms with George R. R. Martin personally, not personally, but I have some qualms with his stuff, just from a creative standpoint. But yeah, lots of influences and stories I love and writers I love. I'm just trying to think of other examples off the dome. A little bit of Tom Clancy. There's a little bit of a Tom Clancy vibe to the story. Just in that kind of that military kind of spy world kind of elements.
Tell me you don't spend 50 pages talking about a sword, because that's the one thing about Tom Clancy.
No. No, I don't think we spend 50 pages focused on one. Well, Dave will probably correct me if I try and say that.
You know what? The reason I even say that is because I think it was 50 pages. In one of his books, he described a rifle in such detail, where the bullet went in the rifle and the whole thing, that it was like 50 pages.
I wouldn't be surprised.
One of his successors, Mark Cameron, who started writing the Tom Clancy Jack Ryan series after him, told me this, and we had this conversation. And Mark Cameron's a friend of mine. He's a talented guy. So good, David. Yeah. He's really into the details, which, Tom Clancy's a good storyteller and writer, but he got a little carried away with some of the details sometimes. So that was the one criticism of him. But people like Mark have taken it over and not do that, so that's good. And his series has continued many books after he died. So I mean, he's a great writer. I'm not putting him down, but it definitely is something that I wouldn't recommend that much description.
Yeah, and I mean, to Dave's point, right? Like we have a rule, and that's Dave is very invested in the story. If his eyes glaze over from my lore dumping, no one else is going to read it. So he's like, "Hey, my eyes glazed over while reading this. We need to make it so that doesn't happen."
Yes, no, absolutely.
And he's the most invested person in it. So if he can't maintain the focus on it, then I absolutely need to change it. And there's tons of lore dumping that I've done because I want to build all this out, right? And he reins that in and helps make it more direct and better.
I should ask you, because this is an important point for most authors. What is this? The guest is a real woman? What is that? Do not come on my feed and make these kinds of comments about my guest. I'm hosting them. You are now muted. You'll be blocked. That's ridiculous. Look, guys, please. I have zero tolerance for it.
Yeah.
Right? Take your bullshit, go shovel it in the field. You're not doing it here. Moving on. What I was going to ask you was, you obviously have done a lot of lore building and stuff. How much of that, percentage of that, would you say actually ended up in the final book?
Percentage of that. Well, we cut a lot.
700 pages. You
right.
Probably at least 3 or 4 or 5 times that much in lore building, I'll bet. and how much of that actually ends up in your book? Is it more than a third?
Dave, you got a thought on that?
Well, here's what
I've got a running document of everything I've cut.
I tell people that generally, if you're lucky, a fifth of what you know about your characters and your world will make it into the final book.
Yeah, that's the other thing is I saved so much of it for later in case we want to bring it up later, because there's 3 books, right? So there's opportunities for that planned at least.
And I was just wondered if you actually had any sense of it. That's the only reason I asked that. Because most people think they dump everything because they're so invested in it and they love it so much. But the thing is, if it doesn't have anything to do with what's happening right now on screen in your story, it doesn't belong there. And you may never need it for anybody who's reading to understand that moment. You need it because you have to understand where things are going, where things have come from, all the characters, all that stuff. But it may not be part of the story you're telling. And so it doesn't need to be in there. And it's really hard for some people to understand that and dump it out. And everybody points to Tolkien, but the thing about Tolkien was Tolkien didn't waste words. Tolkien, he wrote a very unique kind of fantasy that doesn't happen much anymore. He wrote a milieu fantasy. His Middle Earth was a character in the story. So some of the description came out of the fact that the character was the world. And it was a world-focused fantasy. It's a rare thing to see anymore. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point because I think it's important. You know, you have to know at any one given time a lot more than your readers do to be able to tell your story well. And the toughest part of being a writer sometimes is figuring out what you don't need to tell them.
Right.
What you do. And so, if you guys have questions, now's the time when we take some questions for the next 20 minutes or so before we close out. If they're legitimate questions related to Michael, his book, or writing questions in general, feel free to ask them. Other questions, that's not what we're here for. This is Creator Talk Live. I'm Bryan Thomas Schmidt. We're here every Monday through Friday, generally at this time. I have a whole bunch of guests lined up this week. Michael is my first guinea pig this week, but I did 4 shows last week as well. And we hope you enjoy the show. If you do, please like and follow, support our authors. You can go on Amazon and you can find his book, Paragon Exordium. Did I get it right?
Got it. You got it. Perfect.
Paragon Exordium. You can check it out there. And it's out. It's out.
It is out.
Go find it right now, Brandon.
We just passed 100 sales.
On his bio of his profile, you can go to get the book too. You can buy my books off my profile link. There's my whole author page, or you can buy my most recent novel, Shortcut, at the top. You can also sign up for mailing lists and find our Instagrams and all that kind of stuff. We love to interact with readers. So Oz has a question. Oz is my good friend. He's one of my regulars. When did you know you wanted to be a writer? Was there a Nexus event, or was it by accident?
I think from a young age, I always kind of wanted to be one just because I did so much reading and I had such an active imagination. It just wasn't something I really put down the time to pursue until I graduated from college and had the time to do it. That was really the Nexus event.
You did in a way because you did all that lore building, but you didn't really see it as a viable path until...
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so how old are you now? Are you in your 20s?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm 28.
Yeah. 28. Okay. So this is like, you started doing this when you got out of college. So you about 5, 6 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, but you were writing that lore when you were a teenager, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got a piece of art commissioned by a friend of mine in high school. That was a concept piece that I wrote. I had the scene in my head, and I had her draw it out for me. It was just like going to be the original cover. It's not what we ended up going with, but 10 years after I got that art piece made, I wrote the scene, which was super cathartic.
How cool is that? Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool to finally get there.
Have you gotten fan art yet?
I've not gotten fan art. I've gotten a cosplay from a friend of mine's kid who is 10 years old, who the book's not written for children. It's accessible to children because we wanted it to be accessible to all ages by not having swearing or any smut in it. But it's written for adults. But this he's homeschooled and reads really well. And he was 10 years old and he read the whole thing.
There's no smut in there?
There's no smut in there.
I'm not going to read that then. No,
typical TikTok. But he cosplayed one of the characters, which just made my day. Another reader wrote some poetry about one of the characters. So fan art, I have art I've commissioned, but we don't have any actual fan art yet.
Yeah, no, I got you. I mean, because you commission things like the cover and things like that.
Right.
But it is fun. I've gotten the only fan art I've gotten so far. Really, I got some stuff a while ago for my space opera Davirie, but I get a lot of Predator stuff because I've done Predator.
Yeah.
So that's
that's
cool
super
too,
cool.
But, that's not my universe. I didn't create it, but it is cool.
Right.
People do it. Yeah. Now, your book is out in what formats? You've got hardcover and paperback and ebook. Do you have an audiobook?
Not yet. I want to get an audiobook done. I've thought about launching, doing recording chapters myself for Patreon, on a Patreon and stuff. I just haven't had the capacity to really do it. I don't have the resources to hire someone out to record it anytime soon. We got to sell a couple thousand copies just to break even between the cost of the cover and editing, which we'll get there eventually. I'm fully confident, but we're not nearly ready. Huh?
I get it. No, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, so we're not really ready for that.
Shortcut, the budget was $6,000. I mean, it's not cheap. And I hired one of the best editors, best audio narrators in the business work with me. But I mean, you can do them for a little cheaper than that. But it all depends. But yeah, I get it. So hey guys, if you want to support the chat, don't forget the goal at the top, the live goal. I appreciate that. I make it simple. It's just little, the little thumb hearts, but nonetheless. And feel free to subscribe. I made the subscription as cheap as it can be, but that way you'll get bonus content when I have the opportunity to do it.
Hey, Charles.
Again, you can get all of these interviews rerun again and again on YouTube in full. They are there. Oh, thank you, Oz. They are actually there on YouTube. Thank you. Goal achieved. In YouTube, you can actually watch the full episodes. I take the replay and I edit it down, put tags on the beginning and end, and stick it on my YouTube channel. It's hashtag Creator Talk Live. And so I appreciate everybody helping with my goal. Thank you very much. Creator Talk Live, like I said, I interview all different genres, and I will be having some musicians and artists on here eventually. Right now I'm starting with authors because that's who I know. But it's in the works. So I appreciate that. Film Turn, good to see you. Anyway, so let's see. We were taking questions from the audience. Yes, you may post a link to his book, but the easiest thing to do, since you can't click on links in chat, is to go to his profile. Just click on his name right here on the window where you see his lovely face, and go up to his link, and you can find his book link right there and buy it. So just FYI. Hi, Charles. I'm looking through to see if there are any other questions yet. Okay, if you guys have any questions, feel free to come by and send us a few questions for the next 10 minutes or so. In the meantime, let's talk about your cover. Now, you had a cover made for your book. It's a nice looking cover. How did you go about figuring out finding a cover artist and all of that process?
Yeah. Real quick before I forget, because I wanted to mention this earlier, and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about at the moment. But you said you wrote a book called Simon Says. One of my favorite chapters in my book is titled Simon Says. Just to throw that out. It's one of my favorite chapters I've written.
The first book in my John Simon thriller is about a tough technophobic Kansas City cop in 2029 who has to team with an android to solve his partner's murder. And
fascinating.
They end up becoming partners, and it's basically like Lethal Weapon meets Bosch, and meets City of Steel by Asimov. It's basically the robot decides the only way to sound more human is to memorize cop movies, so he starts using all the quotes from the cop movies.
That's great.
But he doesn't know the right context.
That's good. I like that. That's good.
It's fun.
So the cover. So my dad's an artist in his spare time. My brother's an artist. There's a lot of artists in my life. So I was, when we were toying with the concept of getting a cover, we knew we had to do one ourselves. We looked at multiple artists. I follow a lot of artists on Twitter, on Instagram, all over the place. I had a friend do concept art for this
TikTok.
Early on. TikTok, yeah. Newer to TikTok, so I haven't gotten into the art community, but I want to. So we looked at a bunch of different artists, and what Dave and I discussed is like, I want to give them, when we pick an artist, and we picked one who's Serena Malon on Twitter. She's won a Tolkien Society Award. She's done Magic the Gathering cards. She's done some other book covers and stuff. She's fantastic. She's very talented.
She's not cheap.
No, she was not. She was half the cost of production.
Really? Was it about?
Yeah.
Just. I want to just give you guys an idea, and I don't mean to pry, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to.
I'll happily share.
A New York publisher will pay between $2,000 and $4,000 for a book cover. Now, typically, they are buying forever rights to use that cover with that book in any format they want at all times, which is part of why they pay that much. You can actually get. I paid for the cover of my book because I use an artist who does her own design, but also can use a lot of free art to compile. This cover only cost me $150, but it all depends what you want to do. I don't own individually all the elements, but I do have the rights to use them. But anyway, you can spend a lot of money on covers, and sometimes it's worth it. If you want original art, it's going to cost you a lot more than somebody who does Photoshop like mine and puts things together. So it's tricky. I just wanted to give people an idea. So yeah, he spent a lot of money on this cover, and it's a beautiful cover. It's a beautiful.
Yeah, she did a fantastic job.
Can you hold that up for people?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I've got it. It was just.
You got to lean back when you're holding.
There we go. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, there it is. This is it.
Yeah, so we spent.
Tell everybody the title, because this is one of the first questions I asked Michael when I met him.
The title is Paragon Exordium.
Yeah, I asked him, what is an exordium, man? Why did you pick that? Because it's an unusual word.
I don't think I've actually gotten to explain that. So it's funny. We went through multiple titles, as you do, just to go off on a tangent about that. So Paragon was what we went with. Originally, it was titled Haven New Genesis, but there's a DC Comics series called New Genesis, and Haven is overutilized in most dystopian novels. You see that a lot. So we named the main town Paragon based on some in-story reasons. And then Exordium we picked because I went to Google, and I looked up a thesaurus, and I looked at beginning, and I thought exordium was the coolest word that meant beginning. And so that's why we went with it, which is the least amount of effort I put into naming anything. I put so much effort and meaning into like all the names within my book and all the characters and locations and stuff. They all have deeper double meanings and stuff. But exordium was just, hey, that's a really cool word for beginning. And Paragon Exordium sounds kind of neat. And that's why we picked that.
And then I come on and I tell them, you might want to make this easier to digest title. And then the funny part is when I bring him on my show, I make a fool out of myself because I can't remember the first word, but I can remember exordium.
So it works in its own way. Right?
So the joke's on me. No, it's okay, Rufa. Don't worry about it. We're taking questions from the comments. It's good to see you, Rufa. Rufa's my friend down there. Anyway, yeah, it's great for you to come in, Rufa. No problem. So anyway, yeah. So you hired the cover artist. How did you find editors? You worked with David, and he was kind of your first editor, which is great. But how did you go about finding professionals to give you a second opinion and say, okay, we were deluded or we were right?
Right.
Because that's the process.
Right. So we did alpha readers before we did editors. We ran every chapter through Grammarly, which is, it helps to an extent, but it's not an editor.
Okay, let me just say one thing about that. Grammarly is an AI tool. There's nothing wrong with running it through Grammarly. It's a service people tend to pay for. There's a free version as well. You run your manuscript through in sections. You can't actually paste your whole 700-page book in there. It won't work. Okay, you have to take it in sections, and it will help you correct your grammar. It will tell you if it'll help you eliminate repetition, common phrases that you overuse. Words that everybody has word of a book, words that they overuse that you can find. You can start making lists so you look for them in your future writing and kind of fix that problem. You can see where there are parts where you're having a pattern that you don't want to repeat that you are repeating and things. All that. It's very helpful for that stuff. What it can't do is it can't dig into the story and characters and give you the kind of analysis you need to help you fix those things, and it can't help you figure out what the tropes in the market are looking for. Those are the things you need a live editor for. So that, he used that. There's nothing wrong with it. Those who criticize AI, having them write your book is one thing. That I don't agree with at all. But having it help tools like this help you, that's a great thing. Anyway, go ahead. You ran it through Grammarly, and then what happened?
And my wife's an English teacher, so I ran it through her as well. Dave's an English major. He ran it through. We looked on Fiverr. We actually didn't do any editing for the sake of tropes. We didn't care what the tropes were. or the market was. We just wanted to write our story our way. But I'd had some success with artists on Fiverr, so I went on Fiverr and I looked at a bunch of different editors on Fiverr, and I hired someone from Fiverr to do it. And they did a pretty solid job. I don't think we're going to use the same editor next time, because there were some things they really didn't get and some phrases that they didn't understand, which was kind of confusing. But they did a good job. And I mean, there's still a few mistakes in there that we're working on fixing stuff, but it's within the industry standard. So that was
next time he's going to come to me.
There you go.
I'm just kidding, but that is what I do. So he could come to me, but he's going to pick a good answer for him. It's fine. Yeah, no, it's cool. So Fiverr, I used to be on Fiverr, but I never got any business there. So that's why I went on Reedsy, and now I have Top Shelf Editing, which is Top Shelf Editing is my own editing freelance, where a lot of people hire me through that too. So
okay,
that's interesting. I know some people do have success with Fiverr, but I never did. Everybody's looking for $5 edits, and that didn't happen.
Oh yeah, we didn't pay $5 for our edits.
Yeah, no. Honestly, guys, on a note, you should expect to pay between 2 cents a word and 5 cents a word for a reasonable rate if you need a deep edit. If you want a proof, you might get it for 1 cent a word, but that's a reasonable rate for freelance editors. You can look at the Freelance Editors Society and they'll tell you that. That's generally, or $50 an hour. I used to do by the hour, but everybody else was calculating by word, so I switched because people were then complaining when I added hours to their ticket because it took me more time for their book. So anyway, it's a pretty fair rate. If they don't edit anything if they do a per page rate, it's comparable, but most people do per word these days. So between 1 cent and 5 cents per word is where things generally end up. Some people do charge more, but it is anyway. So you found an editor. You liked your editor. You had good back and forth. How many rounds did your editor do? Just one, or did you do multiple rounds with the same editor?
Just one with the same editor.
Okay.
Because we'd already edited it. We'd already done 5 drafts before we even hired a professional editor, and we didn't even hire him until we'd decided to go indie with it.
Brandon, I think I just answered your question, but if I didn't, remind me and I'll say it again in a little bit. But yeah, so did you hire proofreaders and all that kind of stuff?
Say again?
Did you did you do different layers, like a copy edit followed by a proof, all that stuff, or just do that one edit with that edit?
Just that one edit.
Okay.
Because we went through it extensively ourselves too.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to know your process so people can know. People have different processes. How long did it take to write the book from first word, not concepts?
Let's see. About, honestly, 4.5 to 5 years. Because we spent a year querying. Yeah. And then we released this year. So about 4.5 to 5 years.
You queried agents and publishers?
Mm-hmm, for a year.
Yeah, okay. What kind of responses did you get?
It was 99%. This is good, but it's not for me. Mm-hmm. And I queried over 100 different agents and publishers.
And that's mostly what you're going to hear. That's mostly what you're going to hear.
And we recognize it. I'm a debut author, right? It's a giant book. It's not really what the market is saturated with right now. So we're just we want to get this story out there.
Epic fantasy is an exception. Epic fantasy is one place where you can write a doorstopper and have it in your first book.
Even so, ours was long.
Well, maybe, but here's the thing: how many words is it? How many words is it?
231,000.
Yeah, that is a long. 150,000 is probably a better place to start when you're going into fantasy. But here's the thing. The reason that they don't want to invest in a long book from a new author is nobody knows who the hell you are. So people look at this really thick book. Hold your book up again so we can see how thick it is. All right? Look how thick this is. All right, that's his book. Let me show you my book. Now, this book is 120,000 words. His is 2,000, word plus. That gives you an idea, okay? Most books are 90,000 words, which are even thinner than this. But basically, the idea is that when you don't know who the author is, people will say, I'm not going to spend this kind of money and invest this many pages in a guy I don't know if he's good. And that's why that problem happens. However, then you get a guy that comes in and knocks people's socks off, like Patrick Rothfuss, who wrote a very thick book, but then has had trouble writing more thick books to follow it up.
He hasn't gotten his third out.
He wrote a great book. So the biggest problem is the follow through.
Right.
So it is what it is. You know, how often do you write every day? What's your writing setup? I mean, do you have specific times you write? You said you took time off to write, but now are you working a day job too? What do you do?
I was working a day job then. I work full time now. I'm a supervisor for a background check company. I work full time from home currently. I had a farm job and an airport job while we were writing book one.
He does background checks? Oh shit, gotta go.
Yeah, yeah. I do background checks for a majority of South Georgia. So that's my career. But how do I? So I had a kid in June. I had a little girl in June, so that sort of stalled the process a little bit, as it does. Most of my writing happens at night when laying in bed. I don't have a specific. I kind of do. It used to be so when we started. It was we need a chapter a month. Because I was posting a chapter a month on Patreon and people were paying for it. And so I managed to raise a good chunk of money doing that from the supporters and stuff. So that was kind of what we made our goal was like a chapter a month. Since we finished the first book, we veered away from that, and it's kind of like, hey, get a rough draft of a chapter every week so we have something to talk about. But I'll work on multiple chapters at once because I've got multiple POVs. And so it's my goal is to say, hey, if I have time during the week to have something to have enough content to talk with Dave about on the weekend.
And let's be serious for a moment. How many times have you actually used a previous draft chapter because you ran out of diapers to? No, I'm just kidding. The wife comes in and grabs a piece of manuscript right after you. I'm sorry. No!
Right. No, that's important. That's a good one. Right. No.
Yeah, that was the good version. You wrapped the wrong one, honey. Come back.
The left stack, not the right stack.
Yeah. Oh man, I couldn't resist. No,
that's good.
And that's a whole new adventure. The cool part is you're writing books that your kids can read. I'm not sure. I mean, my kids are older, so they can read what I've got. Because I wouldn't mind if teenagers read it, but you know, some of my books, like Simon Says, has got a lot of gritty language in it because it's about cops and it was written realistically, and I did ride-alongs and all this stuff. And this is how cops and criminals talk. So I wrote it that way. But shortcuts a lot. I'm hearing a buzz going on. I don't know.
Yeah, that's my dryer.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like prisoners being released.
Oh, listen. Before your wife gets home, you might want to get the daughter out of the dryer. I realized you were saving time with the wife, and it was genius. But you really have to get her. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway.
I'm more worried about it waking her up.
Yeah, right. No, anyway, I'm joking around. But anyway, the point is that it's great because your daughter now is somebody that's your future reader that you can really look forward to sharing stories with, and that's really exciting. Well, hey, Michael, thank you for being with us, guys. We are almost out of time.
Thank you for having me.
This is Creator Talk. I am Bryan Thomas Schmidt, Creator Talk Live. You can find the final. This show will be up tomorrow on my YouTube channel. You can also watch the first 4 episodes. Tomorrow night, again, we have Jonathan Mayberry here. I'm asking you guys to follow Jonathan because he doesn't have enough followers to get on video. But you can find him. I'm putting his on the screen right now. Jonathan Mayberry. Follow that guy. I just replied to Otis, but follow Jonathan Mayberry. And you can follow him when the clothes are done and they really want to be out of the dryer. I'm telling you. No, but anyway, so Jonathan Mayberry will be our guest tomorrow. He's the former leader of HWA, the Horror Writers Association. He's currently leading the Media Tie-In Association, and he's a hell of a nice guy with a lot of best-selling books. Where can we find you if we want to follow you besides on TikTok? They want to follow you. Where do they go? They go to Amazon. Obviously, your book is there. I found it there. But you have a website? We've lost audio. We do not have your audio. I don't know what happened.
How about now?
Yep, you're back.
So I don't have a website yet. I have X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I've got Instagram and Facebook as well.
Okay, so look the links at the top of his profile. Please like and follow Michael. Please like and follow me and this chat so we can keep doing this. I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight. We are out of time. I'm going to cut it because I want to keep it at an hour. But thanks, Michael, for coming on, chatting, and putting up with all my craziness. I really enjoyed our chat. And
yeah, me too.
Congratulations on your book. I'm really looking forward to. I will be reading it at some point, and I really look forward to your dryer getting the clothes out. And I really.
At least it waited until the end, right?
It's a funny gag. I'm sorry, I can't help it.
I know, it's good. It's like my friends always say it's the really.
Interviewed. What's up with that? No, I'm just kidding.
She's got the baby.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to make problems. I'm just kidding. Anyway, guys, have a great night. Thank you for joining us. This has been Creator Talk Live, and this is Mikel Melwasul, which I hopefully pronounced correctly. The book is Paragon Exordium. And hey, God bless everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night at the same time with Jonathan Maber.